Welcome back to CBS This Morning. There are growing concerns about violence stemming from the results of the election, no matter who wins. An alleged right-wing plot to kidnap and kill Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer is just one example of what the FBI has labeled a growing domestic terror threat. Meanwhile, self-identified militia groups like the Michigan Home Guard are taking part in military-style training. They have reportedly denounced that plot, but they also say they're prepared for a fight in case of what they deem civil unrest. 60 in 6 correspondent Laurie Segall got rare access to the group.
When President Trump was asked at the first debate to condemn white supremacists and right-wing militia groups, his response?
Stand back and stand by.
Was interpreted by Adam Peisker as a message to groups like his.
So when he says stand by, what does he want? What is he planning on having us stand by for? In some of his speeches, he has mentioned somebody has to stop the riots if the government won't. So he's kind of sidelining the militia to do it, is what militias out there are thinking.
Raise your hand if you think that now, more than ever in your lifetime, America's on the brink of civil war.
Who says we aren't already in a civil war?
Right. That's already started.
It's already started.
When you have cities that are burning, you got burning cities, you got Chaz centers set up where people can't go in and out.
That is
law enforcement can't control it. You have a civil war on your hands.
Segall also met with members of an anti-government extremist group known as the Boogaloos. Officials have associated the group's ideology with multiple domestic terror plots.
You can hear the grind in there.
On a Saturday morning in mid-October, we were invited to a suburb of Lansing, Michigan, to spend some time with about 24 Boogaloos as they got together ahead of a rally.
We're just trying to be free again. The Constitution doesn't give the government power, it gives the power to the people.
The Boogaloos are an anti-government extremist group that has become increasingly associated with violence.
A firearm is a regular citizen's last hope to fight against tyranny.
Its members consist of mostly young men who wear Hawaiian shirts and trade cryptic memes that joke about killing members of the federal government and hint at an impending second civil war.
I mean, we're in a room with firearms. Is that part of the plan?
I'm not gonna bring a fork to a gunfight. If you trust the police to carry guns and law enforcement to carry guns and protect you, you should feel just as safe with guys in Hawaiian shirts around.
There comes a point when voting and you're not being listened to isn't enough.
And Laurie Segall joins us now. Laurie, good morning. Amazing bit of reporting here. Militias have a long history in America, and yet interest in them seems to be increasing through the pandemic. Why is that?
Yeah, and I think it's important to pay attention to that. I think there's so much happening now that's creating almost a perfect storm. When we were actually there and talking to folks, people are worried about their jobs. They're losing their jobs. They want a sense of belonging. They told us they felt like their rights were under attack. They felt the government shut down and when they're losing their jobs, and you know, they're trying to come together and create some sense of belonging. And they said, speaking to Adam, who you heard from, he said that more and more people want to join and believe that they're a part of something. So I think you're only going to see this increase, which is pretty alarming.
Gun ownership is protected in America, but if you get a gun and your friends get a gun, you put on uniforms and you train, is there a legal line there that you cross? At what point is a militia's status in question?
It's a super interesting question, because when we were out there, you know, I was asking, is this legal? You know, and we spoke to experts who say, no, this is not legal. You know, it's illegal for private militias to train or engage in paramilitary activity if their intent is to use it against the state or act on authority of police. Now, the problem is if you have these groups going in and acting on behalf of law enforcement unauthorized. You know, speaking to some of these groups, they're talking about showing up armed to protest. You know, I would challenge them and say, what gives you the authority to pull the trigger? And I think that's where some of this danger lies, where the Michigan Home Guard said they don't want to show up to protest unless they're called upon. You know, you have to look. They actually did show up to protect a barbershop from being shut down at one point. They showed up armed. So, you know, there is kind of, you know, we're all kind of on pins and needles waiting to see what happens. The Boogaloo Boys are very different than the Michigan Home Guard. All these groups are different, but they do show up armed to protests, and you know, you run the risk of them where there's all this tension deciding to do something, and more you have these one-offs of people associated with violence with this ideology.
Yeah, and if they're standing by, the question becomes standing by for what? We will be watching on Election Day and after. Laurie Segall, thank you very much. You can watch her report on the Michigan Home Guard on the 60 Minutes YouTube channel right now. It is terrific. I recommend you do so. Her report on the Boogaloos will be out Monday.